Dennis Lockhart, former president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, who moderated the discussion with Bostic, and Randy Quarles, former Federal Reserve Vice Chair of Supervision and co-founder of the Sinosure Group. Dennis, I'll begin with you. You worked with Kevin Warsh. Is he going to cut rates right off the bat? I know it's hard to say because he doesn't take over until May, and obviously we don't know what could happen with the economy between now and then. But how independent do you believe, knowing him, he's going to be?
I think he's going to strike a balance. He's going to have to strike a balance. This is going to be a little bit of a tightrope walk for him in the beginning. He's got the committee pulling him on one side. It's a split committee, but nonetheless, there are a lot of people who feel that the attention should be returned to inflation. And then you'll have the White House and President Trump on the other side. And it's not going to be an easy path for him to navigate. I think he is a pragmatic policymaker and will very likely just follow the data and make the best decision with the committee, but that may not put him in the best position with the White House.
Randy, we got some economic data today. And it actually looked pretty darn good. It was the ISM manufacturing indicator. And this showed, actually, sorry, was it the ISM or was it the PPI? ISM. If we can put that up, because it was stronger than expected on both the headline number, but also when it came to the business, you know, the price pressures, the indicator of inflation. So do you think we need right now an interest rate cut, or do you expect that his first move will be to just pause?
Well, you know, I think it's important to understand what the job of the Fed chairman is, which is not to make that decision. The Fed chairman doesn't have the power to decide what's going to happen with respect to interest rates. There are three parts to the job. You need to analyze all the various decisions, including the monetary policy decisions that face the various action bodies at the Fed. And then you have to catalyze workable decisions out of those bodies. You can't direct those decisions. You don't have the authority to do that. And then you have to communicate those decisions to all the various constituencies of the Fed, the markets, businesses, the White House now, the public, and the institution itself. Kevin has a very strong set of skills in each of those areas. He has a very clear plan for how you'll be able to lower interest rates while at the same time not taking your eye off of inflation, and that's with respect to balance sheet policy. And while that it's a very intellectually credible plan, although, whether it actually works from the real world is still to be tested. But he's got a plan. He's got the skills to do the job. But it's really not the right question. I'm not sure if the White House understands that it's not the right question to say, are you going to lower interest rates? Because he doesn't make that decision.
Dennis, to that point, there are different ways to bring rates down, and one of them is by focusing on the Fed's balance sheet. And we don't want to get too wonky. We don't anticipate or expect that everybody understands what that means. But back during the Alan Greenspan era, he began buying a lot of bonds to kind of inflate the balance sheet. You can sell some of those bonds or move them off the balance sheet, and that may certainly bring down this ballooning $6.5 trillion right now. When Kevin Warsh served on the Fed as a governor way back when, it was at $800 billion. Now it's at $6.5 trillion. So, Dennis, should it really be this high? And how do you think it would affect rates if Kevin Warsh starts to get rid of some of that balance sheet and to winnow it down?
Well, shrinking the balance sheet is a tightening act. And that's not necessarily going to lead to the lower interest rates.
But he said in the past that he doesn't like, he believes that that's a tool that you should reserve for emergencies.
Correct. And it's used when, typically used in quantitative easing when the policy rate hits zero or effectively zero. Mm-hmm. And then it's not necessarily the best tool in other times. But he has stated in the past some goals that are somewhat conflicting: get interest rates down, at the same time shrink the balance sheet. He'll figure out what's the best path here, but I would not expect, just because of the technical aspect of it, an overnight change in the balance sheet.
Let me ask you both about Fed independence. Kevin Warsh wrote in the Wall Street Journal back on April 27th of last year, quote, "Independence is not a policy goal unto itself. It's a means of achieving important and particular policy outcomes. Independence is reflexively declared when any Fed policy is criticized." Randal, do you think the Fed should be held accountable for their mistakes, such as keeping rates too low for too long, or do you think that they should just operate totally independently and protected from any kind of criticism?
No, I think both as a matter of policy and as a matter of law in the United States, I wish we used a different term than independence to describe the right relationship between the Federal Reserve and our various democratic structures in the country, because I am very much a legal believer in the unitary executive theory. There's no such thing as an independent agency, which doesn't mean that the political arms of the government, whether that's Congress or the president or somebody else, ought to be able to dictate short-term decisions about monetary policy. And the structure of the Fed is designed to ensure that there is plenty of democratic input from the White House. There's nothing wrong with the president expressing a view from the various parts of the country, which is why we have 12 reserve banks, and the presidents of those reserve banks all participate in the decisions that are made. But at the same time, no one element of that complex structure can dictate the outcome. And that's why the job of the Fed chair is both misunderstood and so hard, because the Fed chair can't dictate the outcome either. What the Fed chair can do is make a strong case and catalyze a decision from that complex structure. And that's what he needs to do.
And yet, Dennis,
and that's what independence is. It's not saying no one can criticize what it is the Fed could do. The president should not say anything about monetary policy. That's not what independence is.
Okay, but Dennis, to that end, the pressure that the president has certainly publicly put on Jay Powell, do you think that is appropriate?
I think he went too far. I think an occasional comment from a president is perfectly appropriate, but I think the ad hominem attacks on Powell went way too far. But
I completely agree with that.
Another important issue is what goes on in the room. And Randy's been in that room. I've been in that room. I sat in on 80 meetings, and there was never anything political discussed in deliberating over policy. And that, to me, is the way it should be. So plenty of people can comment, and I think that's fine. It's when they try to affect what goes on in the room.
Dennis Lockhart, Randy Quarles, thank you very much. And we'll bring you back before May when Jay Powell leaves as chair, but has the choice to stay on as one of the members. That'll be interesting to see.